Your goal should be to double your IRA every year until you have $100,000 in it. My name is Rich Lennon. Thanks for joining me on Growing the Money, where we talk about all things growing the money every weekday morning from normally 8 to 8:10, but summer hours right now are 9 to 9:10. We're going to get at it. All right, today we are going to talk about those IRAs. I got a good buddy who taught me all about IRAs a long time ago. He had a little bit of fall yesterday, so IRAs are on my mind and everything that man had done for me. And yeah, so I'm just going to talk about IRAs. So when I say you should double your IRA every year until you get to $100,000, there's two things you really need to be able to do there to accomplish that. Number one, you have to know the techniques that allow you to do that. So how do you go from putting a $6,000 contribution? How do I make it 12? How do I make it to 12,000 in 1 year? Then how do I double it from 12 to 24,000 in year two? And then I just 25 to 50,000 and then 50 to 100,000, understanding the techniques to do that. But in general, any transaction that you can do in real estate, you can do in a self-directed IRA. So the technique is an important part about it. But today I'm going to focus on the paperwork involved with that and the structure that you need to have in order to make it a secure investment for yourself and your partner. And yeah, so let's go. We're going to dive right in after I have a sip of coffee. All right, love that first sip of coffee in the morning. All right, here we go. So the two things that you're going to really have to make sure that you understand here are a trust and a joint venture agreement. So we're going to talk about both of those things. But the premise is that if you're going to come in with a small dollar IRA, it has to be an investment. So you have to put your money in. But $6,000 or $12,000 or $25,000 or $50,000 is often not enough to be able to do a real estate transaction. Simply not enough money. And we don't really want to leverage inside our IRAs, because when we leverage inside our IRAs, we become subject to UBIT, unrelated business income tax. And so it isn't really tax free when we leverage. Different discussion for a different day. So the technique that we want to use and the structure that we want to use is with land trusts and partnerships. Now, I have spoken out vociferously about partnerships, and I'm not a fan of partnerships, but partnerships in an individual deal are often okay. I'm not tied to this person a long time. There might be some things that I don't like to go on in our relationship during that transaction, but it's only one transaction. It's not my life. It's not a whole partnership. It's just a deal. It's one deal, and paperwork is limited to that one deal. And we're going to talk about how to do that structurally wise. So one person, which is the IRA holder, and probably the person listening to this podcast, trying to understand what that really is. So that person will likely have to bring two things: a small amount of money, because IRAs are investment vehicles, they're not transactional. So you can't just do a transaction like for example, like a real estate agent or a wholesale. I'm not a believer in that. So you have to do an investment. So you're going to have to contribute some amount of money into the deal. But then you're going to have to find a money partner. You're going to have to find that financial friend who is going to do the deal with you. And this person can either be another IRA. IRA is a fine option. I think though an even better option is find someone who has an LLC and combine and partner with someone else's LLC. And the reason we say partner with the other LLC is because that LLC doesn't quite have as many restrictions as the IRA. For example, if it has to hold money, it's easier to hold money in an LLC than it is to hold money in an IRA. So let's talk about what that structure might look like. So the first thing is that the deed of the property should be in a land trust. Okay, a land trust, I talked about trust many times on podcasts. A land trust can be an important part of your investment strategy. Just some very basics about a land trust. It operates, it's a contract. Land trust is a contract, just like your LLC documents are a contract. So in that regard, it's very similar. It's a piece of paper that allows you to do the things that you want to do. There are some specific rules to the land trust. And a couple of those are what's the makeup of the trust? And in this specific situation, how do we make up the trust? Well, there are three main pieces to a land trust. There is the grantor, and this is the person or persons who who give the trust the power. So they're the ones that make the trust. They grant the power of the trust. This is a very powerful position within the trust. Like oftentimes the grantor, what they make can be unmade. That makes it a revocable trust. And so they could revoke that trust, et cetera, et cetera. So the grantor is one of those spots. The trustee needs to be a disinterested third party. You need to make sure that that person is not someone that you're doing business with in another manner. If you are doing things in an IRA, you need to make sure that that person is not prohibited from you. You need to make sure that you understand the IRA rules to pick that trustee correctly, and the beneficiaries of be the third component of that land trust. And so in a situation where you're taking in a money partner and you're doing a transaction, and say you're trying to grow your IRA from $25,000 to $50,000 one year, you are going to have co-grantors. So the two grantors in that situation will be your IRA will be one of them, the entity for which you are investing from. And the other grantor will likely be your money partner. So either an LLC will be the grantor, the individual who is your partner, or if they're doing the investment through an IRA, then the second grantor would be the IRA of your partner. And those are the grantors. And there can be multiple grantors on a revocable trust. And so that's the first position that you would have to fill is the grantors. The beneficiaries. I say in this example that the beneficiaries will be 50% of one IRA and 50% of the money partner. So that money partner, again, could be an individual, could be an LLC, or could be an IRA. So it would be 50-50 in general. It doesn't have to be 50-50. No, you can negotiate that. It could be 40% is the IRA, or it could be 60% is the IRA. And so, but the beneficiaries of the deed need to have both entities. And that is important. Whether the exact ownership of the entity is up for grabs, you can figure that out as you negotiate the deal. The trustee is a person, again, who is a disinterested third party that is not prohibited from anybody else in the transaction. And that is your entity. And so if you get the deal under contract, the deal has to get under contract through that land trust. I don't know if through is the right word, but the land trust has to be the named purchaser of the piece of real estate. And the trustee of said land trust needs to be the one who signs said purchase agreement. So you have the purchase agreement in the name of that land trust, and the person who signs the purchase agreement needs to be the trustee of said land trust. Now, the third document that you need to have, and you need to make sure that the second document, first one is just a contract. The second document that you really need here is the joint venture. And I think this is the one that people mess up the most. And the joint venture needs to define the relationship. I think that is the fundamental purpose of the joint venture. And what I mean by define the relationship is you might talk about the deal a little bit, and then no matter how much you talk about it, I promise you that both parties will have a slightly different perspective about how the deal is supposed to go. And an example might be, how long is the deal supposed to go? What's the exit strategy? Are we going to keep this as a rental, or are we going to keep this and we're going to flip this property? What is the exit strategy? And you need to make sure that you cover these things in a joint venture. Consider it like an operating agreement for the LLC. Who has the power to do what? And so it can break down all kinds of scenarios. It can break down. I do love, it's one of the techniques of growing a small dollar IRA is to bring in a money partner, and then the IRA collects rent for a period of time, 1 year, 2 years, whatever, because we're trying to grow that IRA very fast. And so we're in that deal for a little while we're collecting that money. And then the joint venture defines, okay, all the rent for the first 2 years goes to the IRA, but then ownership of the property goes to my money partner, and then the IRA exits the deal. That's just one example of something that could be discussed inside the joint venture. Another thing that might need to be discussed inside the joint venture is what happens if more money is needed in the deal. And this could be really important, because if you are using all your money from your IRA to enter into this deal, you might not have any more money inside your IRA. And if more money is needed in the deal, you have to figure out how you're going to get that more money. And if it requires more money in the deal, does the money partner get a higher percentage of the deal? Like, let's say you bought a house, you thought the renovation was going to be $25,000, the renovation ends up being $50,000. Who comes up with that $25,000? And if they come up with that $25,000, do they get a higher percentage of the deal than what they originally wanted? I don't know. That's up to you. That's up to how you define the joint venture. But you can see on just one example how things could get complicated very quickly. All right, I'm out of time already. I don't know how time goes so fast on these things. My name is Rich Lennon. Come check me out on the things I love to talk about at richlennon.com. Download the Smarter Wealth Blueprint. You will see how I do my lending and how I am able to grow my money at the rates that I am able to grow it out. Go check it out. 2 entities plus a contract. You need a land trust and you need the joint venture agreement. So many people leave out that joint venture agreement, and some people leave out having partial ownership of that deed by being on the land trust. All right, everybody have a great day. Maybe I'll talk about the techniques of the IRA. Depends how my buddy's surgery goes today and how I'm feeling tomorrow. All right, everybody have a good one.